You're live.
Hi there. I see a lot of familiar faces out there. I appreciate you guys coming to my talk today. My name is Joshua Smith, and I work on the PC-BSD project, also for IX Systems. I work in quality assurance, so it's basically a glorified title for me. I do a lot of different things on the project, but mainly I leave the heavy lifting to the other two lead developers. This talk is going to be on PC-BSD. It's kind of an introductory primer on PC-BSD, and it's also going to have about 10 to 15 minutes of, excuse me, 10 to 15 minutes of new features that we have added to PC-BSD just in the last couple of months. All right, so before we talk about what PC-BSD is, it's important to know what PC-BSD is built on, which is FreeBSD. There's a lot of good things about FreeBSD. It's a Unix-like operating system that's descended from AT&T Unix. It's known for its legendary stability and security. We utilize the port system, which will allow you to basically build your software for your system from source. It's a unified development model, which basically means it is a complete encapsulated operating system in and of itself. It is not piecemeal together. We have excellent documentation. Even if you're a new user, you can feel very comfortable basically getting into our documentation and not feeling completely overwhelmed from the start. In other words, it'll basically start from a really good point if you've never used a BSD or PC-BSD. Now, there are a couple of hang-ups with FreeBSD. For a guy like me, I come from a background where I was, I don't want to say this too loudly, but a Windows system admin. And when you go from something like that into an operating system that is basically very command line driven, there can be a little bit of a learning curve there. Just to give you an example, just to configure something like my wireless, and considering myself an advanced user, it took me the better part of 45 minutes, which I felt very silly afterwards because it didn't seem that hard, but just not being familiar with it, it took me a while. It's also historically been lacking some of the more PC-oriented device drivers. Now, the good news about that is recently we've gotten a lot better. In the past, we haven't had great support for AMD graphics cards, or ATI, whatever you want to call them. And we've actually added support built directly into the FreeBSD kernel for those graphics cards. We've also just recently, very, very recently, in the last couple of weeks, added support for Haswell and Broadwell. Still very, very new, but it is available in the PC-BSD 11 current image. So FreeBSD and PC-BSD use a simplified BSD license. I just want to briefly talk about this and a couple of differences, just so you guys get an idea of what the differences are maybe between a BSD and a Linux. Basically, it's a very short, it's an easy to understand license. It weighs in at just 193 words. So very, very simple to read and understand. It's what we like to consider a permissive license. So if you do want to take that and commercialize it later for a project or something like that, that is allowed. It also protects the developers from liability resulting from use of the original software. And this is just kind of an example of a BSD license, just to give you an idea. There's just a couple of clauses here, a few paragraphs, but nice and easy to understand and read. So then I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference that I see in the GPL3 license. Now this, I want to make sure I make this clear. This is not saying one is better than the other by any means whatsoever. Just to kind of illustrate, they do serve different purposes. It is a little bit longer. It can be a little bit more complex to understand, especially maybe if that person isn't from a technical background, if it's a business manager that's just wanting to know if they can use the software permissively for their use. It could be a little more complex to understand. It offers a lot of protection to keep a product open source, which obviously in a lot of cases it has definitely done its job. In some instances, we have heard of businesses that say it can be a little difficult to commercialize, not that it can't be, just that there can be a little bit of difficulty there. It's just not quite as permissive, I guess, since it is a copyleft license. So now that we've talked about FreeBSD a little bit, let's go ahead and get into what PC-BSD is. Well, basically, quite simply, it's FreeBSD simplified. What we do is we give you pre-configured desktop and server installations. They're just ready to go right from the installer. We are desktop environment independent, so you can count on if you want to choose your favorite desktop environment. If it's in Linux, usually we have a port for it in FreeBSD as far as desktop environments go. All kinds of different ones, and we can talk about more of those later. We also have a lot of additions that are added on top of FreeBSD. We have the graphical installer that'll just make it nice and easy, lead you through the entire setup process. We have the Warden for our jail management, which basically just manages isolated versions of FreeBSD. It's a type of virtualization, and you can just have a bunch of these different jails running. If you want to run, say, like a web server or something, you could totally run that from inside a jail. But again, we'll talk about that a little more in depth. We have App Cafe for our push-button installer applications. It manages all the different kinds of applications with packages and push-button installers. We have a whole bunch of other graphical utilities that we include, and I won't unfortunately be able to mention all of them, but I will have a live demo set up at my booth out there if you guys want to have a look, and I can show you all those ones. And also, we offer full disk jelly encryption. If you want to lock down your hard drive basically right there from the installer, you can actually do full disk encryption right from the installer. So I'm going to show you guys just a few slides, and then we're going to move on into some showing you guys like the utilities that we offer and some of the new development we've been doing. But to start with, I'm going to show you guys, this is Crypt 2 bootloader that we're using. We actually brought that in because it helps us work with boot environments, and I'll also speak on that in more detail, but it helps us to manage our backups of our system. So we do use that. You have a graphical install, which is what most people are going to use. You also have a fail-safe Visa mode in case you get into a situation where you have a graphics driver that's just not cooperating quite right. You can go with that and hopefully get it all ironed out and then select whatever driver package you need after. And we also have a text installer emergency console. It kind of doubles as both. You can totally go through an entire text install, not have to have any graphical user interface at all. So this is going to be the first screen that you're greeted at when you start PC-BSD. You'll see that you can select your language, which might be important if English isn't the first language you want to use. And you'll have a couple other options. You have load config from USB, which you'll have options throughout the install to save your whole configuration, your disk setups, your desktop environments, however you set up your packages. All of that can just be saved really easily to a USB stick. And if you're doing a lot of rollouts, then you can just simply roll that same configuration out across multiple systems. You'll also see in the bottom left of this window right here, that is our detected hardware window. This is just real nice and easy. Make sure you check that out. That way you don't have to install the operating system just to see if your hardware works. So you do that just first thing in the installer. You can see right here it says no Wi-Fi detected, but that wasn't a big deal. This was a VM anyway, so that's kind of expected. We have some other options down there that I don't really have highlighted, but you can have a virtual keyboard. There's also helpful hints that can pop up and kind of help you guide you through the process, but it's pretty intuitive. I think any of you would find it pretty easy to use. So then we would just press next, and then it would bring us to our system selection screen. So we have our desktop setup, which is what we consider PC-BSD. That is going to be pre-configured to have all of the packages, the graphical interface that you're going to need to run the workstation. Then we have a server installed, which is TrueOS. Now, TrueOS is just basically FreeBSD with some additional PC-BSD utilities, command line utilities built on top of it, but it is entirely CLI-based or terminal-based. Then we have another option, restore from the Live Preserver backup. Live Preserver is going to be what actually backs up your entire system, and that's awesome. You can actually do a full install right here from the installer, or a full restore actually here from the installer. There's a customize button there that will allow you to select different desktop environments. We have many of those preloaded, probably many of your favorite ones. And you can also select different driver packages and things of that nature at that time. So this is the disk selection screen. It's important to go ahead and press the customize button and select what partition you're going to be booting to. PC-BSD will automatically take the drive if you do not specify. Now it will warn you, it's pretty explicit. It'll say, you know, hey, this is a full disk install. Make sure you really want to do this. But, you know, just keep that in mind. You know, not that I've ever actually forgotten to do that on a production system, but yeah, that's why we made it big and bold now. So right here you can see you have a few different options. You have basic, which is just going to be switching between partitions, basically. You have an advanced mode that's going to let you select some more in-depth options. You can select your partition as well as partition it with GPT, force a 4K block size, and then also we have options to basically help out with solid state drive installations. It'll just automatically tune it for you to get the most out of that drive right away. With the ZFS file system, we have the software RAID that we can automatically set up for you. Really nice and easy. As long as you have the drives to do it, we'll help you set it up. It's really, really simple and straightforward. So any kind of RAID that you might want to use, we can just set that up for you just automatically. Then we have the button to just go ahead and start the installation. So not a big deal there. We've got everything the way we want it. So we would just press yes. And after that, you give it about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on your packages. If you selected KDE or GNOME 3 during install, you know, of course, it's going to take a little longer. But in general, I mean, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. It's a pretty fast install. And then you'll have one more chance to save that configuration to USB so you can recall that later on and roll it across multiple systems. So at that point, we would just hit finish, let the system reboot. Of course, take out our disk, you know, we don't want to boot back into the installer. And then you'd be greeted by this nice spiffy screen right here that says, welcome to PC-BSD. So nice and neat. We don't put a lot of stuff on there to start with. As you can see, just 3 icons and then your tray apps, of course, that automatically come with. So now that we've talked about PC-BSD, let's talk about our utilities. We're going to talk about our stock utilities that we've had for a while for a minute. And then after that, I'm going to talk to you guys about some of our new development that we've been working on. I think you'll be pretty excited about. So we have the control panel, the app cafe, which is going to be your package management, and the Warden for jail management. The control panel is just exactly what you would expect it to be, nice and orderly. All your system settings all in one place. You have an option up there where the red square is kind of surrounding that little click box there. And you can choose from a couple different options. You can just have a normal default PC-BSD control panel, or you can select a hybrid control panel, which will basically merge in different desktop environment utilities. So if you have a utility like an XFCE, you want to use it in KDE, you would actually be able to use that across the different, in a different desktop environment if you use a hybrid. You have to remember that's a little bit more of an advanced feature, so can't say that all of the features would play nice together, but you know, you do have that option as an advanced user if you want to do that. So here's the App Cafe. The App Cafe is a fully searchable application catalog. You can launch all of your applications from one centralized place here. You can actually also use it to manage package installations on other systems. So here's the cool thing, okay? If you have a PC-BSD box that you're sitting here using, let's just say that's what I'm using here, and you have a True OS box sitting over in the corner, or you know, FreeBSD for that matter, during the True OS setup, it'll actually prompt you and say, do you want to set this up for remote package control? You would just simply say yes, type in whatever credentials you want it to use, then you can access it from the desktop machine, which is really, really nice and neat. You would just actually click that box where it says local system. There's a little click box there to the right of it. And then you can select if you want to install it here on the PC-BSD system or on the True OS system. It has a new PHP Web Interface for controlling package configurations. We kind of did that to help out with these remote package control situations that we integrated into PC-BSD. I do realize looking at it, it's a little bit rough around the edges. This is still pretty new, and we are still getting it themed and all set. So you can actually add any or all of the desktop environments you want right here without reinstalling the OS. As a matter of fact, you can install them, and there's several you just log out and log back into, and you don't have to even reboot. So that's pretty sweet. You can also add any additional drivers, development toolkits, really any packages you want at that point. That's what App Cafe is for. Now let's talk about the Warden. The Warden is a jail management system. You can create isolated versions, like we talked about earlier, FreeBSD, and this will just manage them for you. Okay, all your jails will be here. So let's say that you wanted to run an Apache server and wanted to host a website or something, inside this jail. It'll have its own IP address. It will be completely isolated from the rest of your system. If somebody was to compromise that jail, let's just say that there was a vulnerability and somebody got into that jail that hosts your website, they are not going to be able to touch the rest of the system or other jails. So it's very, very safe and secure. Very good idea if you're hosting multiple things like that. There's 3 types of jails. What I've been talking about is the traditional FreeBSD jail. We also have a ports jail, which is just gives you a little more freedom with using ports. And we have Linux jails, which we consider experimental. Do they work? Yes. Are they difficult to configure? Probably. It depends on your setup. There's several people I know that run them, but there are going to be situations where you might want to seek help, or somebody who is a little more understands how the Warden works to get that functioning. But we have a very friendly community. We'd be glad to have any of you guys on IRC, and we'd be glad to help you out with that. You can also export or import jails between systems, and that doesn't exclude any type of FreeBSD system. In other words, if you want to move a jail from a FreeBSD system to a PC-BSD system, you can do that. If you want to move a jail from a PC-BSD system to a true OS system, you can do that as well. It's also available as a command line application or as the GUI-based application. So you can, if you're just doing a server-based install, you can totally just run it from command line. It's very easy to use. All right, so our general utilities. We have Live Preserver that manages your automatic data backups. That'll be your full system backups. We have a couple different kinds we're going to talk about here in just a minute. We also have the mount tray, which is just a simple utility for mounting external devices. Works in any of the desktop environments, so you don't have to have a different one for each one. And we also have the Pulse Audio configuration utility. We did pull in Pulse Audio. It offers us a little extra compatibility with some of these Linux apps that run in our emulation. We have the boot manager, which is our Grub2 front-end manager, or GUI for that. The network manager that manages your wired or wireless connections. Sound configuration, where you can just select your microphone inputs. You can switch easily between them just from the tray app. So really nice and easy. You don't have to open up a big utility and switch everything around. There's tons more, but I can't mention all of them, obviously, because we have a whole bunch in here. But we'll mention the big ones today. So Live Preserver, it's an easy-to-use backup interface for PC-BSD. This will take an entire ZFS system snapshot of your PC-BSD system. You can schedule backups as frequently as you want, or I guess not frequently as you want, however you want to do it. And you can remotely replicate your system to a FreeBSD box, a TrueOS box, or a FreeNAS server if you so want. That is built in to this. And like you saw earlier, where there is that restore button, you do have the option to do a bare metal full system restore from the installer. So I'll show you guys a couple of pictures of Live Preserver here. Right here, you can see this is the Snapshot Schedule screen, and you can just easily pick however you want it to set up. You don't have to be worried. I know you see 5 minutes there, and you're like, well, if it's backing up every 5 minutes, isn't it going to be huge? But the way that ZFS works is when that backup is created, it literally there's literally no file size. Okay, it's only going to grow as it changes from the original. Okay, so as you're doing more changes, it gets further away from when that snapshot was created, it will grow a little bit, but still they're very condensed in size and easy to manage. All right, so here we go. This is just showing you the folder structure basically after you have your backup done. You can easily just go through the folder structure, look for whatever file you need, or you can choose to roll back several folders if you so wish. But that's what it looks like if you're going to do a live preserver restore. You would just basically browse for it in that GUI right there and select it. You'll see a slider bar right there, kind of in the middle, that says tank 1 backup, and then it has a whole bunch of numbers and dates after that. That slider bar is just going to let you slide back and forth between your backups. So that'll just be different dates and times. So that's what that's for. There's tons of other features, advanced features. I'm not going to go into those too in depth, but if you want to know more later, definitely stop by the PC-BSD and FreeBSD booth. Later on, we'll talk more about that. Now, boot environments. We're very proud of boot environments. They are a feature that's pretty much exclusive to ZFS. What it does is it snapshots all of your system files and configurations. And I do mean just your system files and configurations. It's not going to back up your home directory that's got all your videos or all your music or all your documents in it. This is basically if you get into a situation where you're modifying your xorg.conf and something kind of goes a little sideways and you can't get back into your graphical system, you can actually, just from the grub2 bootloader, you can just simply select an older boot environment and it will instantaneously boot you into an older version of PC-BSD that worked. Now, that is dependent in that case if you're going to be messing around with like some of the more heavy configuration files. You need to remember to go ahead and kick off a snapshot in that case. But at any rate, it's very, very useful if you know you're going to be modifying a bunch of configuration files. It's extremely fast. I kind of already mentioned that. It is literally instantaneous. I mean, you click a button, it's done. So that backup of your system and configuration files is just ready to go in case something goes wrong. I put less than 5 seconds just because honestly, I don't know, maybe on a slower system it might take a little longer, but I mean, I've even used it on 1 gigabyte of memory on a ZFS system and it was still just about instantaneous, so very, very fast. You can boot between boot environments for different types of setups for your system. Let's say that you have your system configured basically to run through a private proxy or something on one boot environment, and you have it just set to take defaults for its internet route on the other. That's easily done. You can totally do that and just select the grub2 bootloader between the two that you want. Boot environments are also automatically created when doing major package changes. Now, this is really, really cool. This is part of our update manager's features, and we're going to talk about it more here in a second. But basically, whenever there's an update for your PC-BSD system, we go ahead and we kick off that system snapshot for you. And in case anything goes sideways, say you're on the developers branch and you like to live dangerously, and you're testing out a lot of the new features that are coming out, you may get in a situation where you do need to definitely roll back to an earlier system snapshot. So we just do that by default every time there's an update, since it is instantaneous. So I'm going to show you our boot manager. This is basically our grub2 GUI. It's just to manage anything to do with grub2. It'll let you easily manage any of your ZFS system snapshots that we talked about, your boot environments. You can easily and safely remove any of them. It won't let you remove the one that you're running. That would be bad. But it does not allow you to do that. So you can see here that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boot environments on this screen. The top one I kicked off by myself and named Alpha. Now that top one, since I specified that I wanted it kicked off by itself, that one will stay static. It will not go away. But these other ones, you'll see at the very bottom of that window where it says maximum auto-generated boot environments. These other ones will be automatically pruned since they were just automatically done by the system when updates were done. Then we have the update manager, which keeps your system up to date and in sync automatically. So basically, if you are on a certain package set, if you are on our enterprise branch, which is our extended release, you can select from that. Basically, all of that branch, the only thing that changes with that branch is going to be security updates. And packages will change very infrequently, and we kind of leave that more up to the user if they're going to be updating those. Then we have the production branch. Production branch updates about every 3 months. It will get security updates, of course, as they happen. We want to roll those out immediately if we find a security issue. Then we have the edge branch, which is our developers branch. That's usually the branch that, that's the branch I live on, and most of the developers and a lot of our volunteers will help us to diagnose some issues with new packages and things like that. You can totally use it, but you will run into occasions where you may need to be a little more of an advanced user and comfortable at least with going into a terminal if we need to assist you in helping you with something. You can see right there, you can select from everything. You can have it just manage security packages, or you can have it manage nothing. Just keep in mind, if you just set to do nothing, you are completely responsible for managing any of the updates for your system, including the security. I do realize, though, some users just want to have that control, though, over the way they want to do their packages, which is why we do provide that option. All right, so now that we've talked about some of our utilities we've had for a while, we're going to talk about the new direction PC-BSD has been going in, and our renewed focus on security for the end user. Beginning in late 2014, we started to kind of think in more terms of, it's not just Windows computers, it's not just Mac computers anymore. Any computer that is accessible to the internet can be very easily compromised these days if the person has the right knowledge. So what we've done is we've started to develop new utilities that are going to help users protect themselves and protect their data. So to do that, we created stealth sessions, Persona Crypt, and Tor Mode, which some of you, we didn't obviously create Tor Mode, we just integrated it into the operating system, but some of you may be familiar with Tor Mode. So with stealth sessions, I feel like it's important to say this is something that is totally up to the administrator to turn on or off. It's not a default. But if you want to have stealth sessions on, what it does is it will create an empty home directory for you, basically. It's mounted as a ZVol, and then it's destroyed at logout. It uses a one-time key encryption. So once that session is ended and you log out or shut down your computer, that key is then lost with the directory. Since it was never actually saved or anything like that, then you do not have to fear about your data ever being compromised in that situation. We also have Persona Crypt. Persona Crypt is a really awesome new feature that will allow you to put a fully encrypted home directory on an external media device. For instance, in the PC-BSD project, we use USB 3 solid state drives that we have hooked up, and we have fully encrypted home directories with Persona Crypt. You can do this with during install or from our user manager utility after the fact. It's formatted using GPT, the ZFS file system, and Jelly encryption. And it can also be called from a terminal instance as well if you do have server instances that you want to use this for. Now, the cool thing about that is, and let me explain a little more about it, it will only work on the system that generated the original key. Okay, so if somebody takes that key and say it got stolen or something, and they try to pop it into another PC-BSD box, or any box for that matter, it will not work in that other PC-BSD system. And since it is fully encrypted, that would be extremely difficult to compromise that. You'll see here on this window right here, we have a couple of different options. Under change password, one that says initialize device. You would click initialize device if you wanted to set up a new user as a Persona Crypt user in our user manager. What that would do is just prompt you. It would say, hey, I'm going to erase this USB stick that I detected. Is that okay? And you would just allow it to do so. Then it would initialize that to work with this computer that you initialized it on. Now, if you want to take a stick that you use on, say, your desktop, and you want to add that Persona Crypt user to a laptop, you can then use this import key function. So as long as you know your key, you just simply type your key in, or you have it encrypted somewhere else or something. You would just import that key at that time, and then you would be able to use that encrypted Persona Crypt device on both devices in that case. And then you can also, of course, revoke privileges if you want to in that case. So Tor Mode. Tor Mode is something we added very recently. It will allow you to browse anonymously via the Tor network. Some of you may be familiar. There are some Linux distros I know that have it built in. We've actually built it directly into our Update Manager's right-click menu. So if you want to turn it on with just a couple of simple clicks, you can do so. You would just right-click on the Update Manager icon and then just select that you want to enable Tor Mode. It won't clear on reboot, which is awesome. It's going to persist. So if you have it set to run through Tor mode, it's going to stay that way until you tell it not to. It'll automatically adjust your firewall for you, so you don't have to be an advanced user to benefit from it. We will just automatically set all of those rules for you, and then of course change them back if you decide to disable it. All right, so now that we talked about those, I'll show you guys some of the desktop environments that we support. We have QueTe XFCE, the Lumina desktop environment, which is actually developed by the PC-BSD team ourselves. We have GNOME 3, Cinnamon, LXDE, and there's tons more. I don't know exactly how many there are off the top of my head, but there are a bunch. And if you have a favorite on Linux, there's more than likely a support on FreeBSD. So here's just a screen just to show you kind of what QueTe looks like, with a basic theme and with PC-BSD installed. This is what it's going to look like for you. Or XFCE, if you're familiar with that. And then I want to talk a little more in depth about the Lumina desktop environment. This is actually a desktop environment that was created by Ken Moore at the PC-BSD project. It is completely and fully BSD licensed, which we've actually found there's actually a lot of people out there that found a lot of value in that. It was designed to offer basically maximum performance and functionality while also streamlining some overhead. So it's just designed to be very compact, very fast, very responsive. It's a minimal size. Last I checked, it was 33 megabytes. That may have grown in just the last month by just a little bit, but it's still extremely, extremely small. And that is with dependencies, so very, very small footprint. It's still in its beta stage, but it's very functional. It has a lot of features that are already built in that maybe other desktop environments don't even have. So definitely check it out. It has some very, very cool features, and it is designed to work 100% with PC-BSD. It's also available for many popular Linux distributions, including Debian, Arch Linux, and Slackware. And you can also use file restore functionality that is built directly into the Insight file manager. So that is super, super cool. If you're actually browsing for a file and you have one of those oh crap moments, either somebody got on my computer, one of the kids was messing with it, I hope that wouldn't happen. But if something like that did happen, you could just easily roll back to a previous version of that file or recover the file right there from the file manager itself. And then there's a picture right there of the Lumina desktop environment. So I do have icons on there. They're kind of hidden from that drop-down menu right there. But there's just 3 icons, so they're just kind of covered up there. But then you just, of course, have your date and time and whatever plugins that are running in the background for PC-BSD. You have this menu over here on the left-hand side of the, or on the right-hand side of the screen that will basically show you your different applications that you have installed. So nice and easy to use, very sleek and minimalistic. All right, so we'll talk about the highlights for PC-BSD at this time. It is free, completely free to use in any situation. You can deploy it on as many systems as you want and servers as you want. It can run as a server if you so wish. It uses the FreeBSD simplified license, which is small and user and business friendly. And it has a simplified GUI-based install that is similar to a lot of the graphical Linuxes that hopefully you might be comfortable with if you come from a Linux background. We're very focused at this point on security for the end user and look for that to continue going forward. We're going to put more and more of our development time into making sure the software is just even more and more secure going forward. We have boot environments, which obviously let you roll back to previous system states after you kick those out, or if you have an update to your packages, it will be automatically kicked off for you. And then we have the Lumina desktop environment that is backed by PC-BSD's team and resources. So we actually spend quite a bit of time of work on Lumina, developing that every single week. So if you want something that is just absolutely designed to work as well as humanly possible with PC-BSD, then Lumina may be the desktop environment for you. All right, so with that being said, I've kind of reached the end of the talk portion of this today, and I'll go ahead and open the floor for questions if you guys have any. Yeah.
With the Linux jails, is that the BSD kernel running with the Linux user space?
So the question was, with Linux jails, is that basically the BSD kernel running with the Linux user space, is what you said. Basically what it is, I mean, the FreeBSD kernel is running, but when you're setting up that Linux jail, I mean, we're actually running a script basically to configure it with the I tell you what, I'm gonna do something for you. Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Once it comes by default, it comes with scripts to install Debian and what is it, Gentoo?
Yes, you have Gentoo and you have Debian.
So and those ones are very easy to run with the BSD, which is why it comes with those. But you can run start scripts for other Linux distributions as long as they work with BSD. So it's not actually installing.
So the answer to that question,
it's using the.
Yeah, so the answer to that question was yes. Taves, so that I appreciate your help there on that one. Yeah, but anyone else? Yeah, yes, sir.
All of the features, are they dependent on the ZFS file system, like a lot of the restore features, and also
Yes.
the when you talked about how quick it was to do backups, does ZFS basically do a hash of the file system, and is that how it's working, or is it doing it basically on a file level, a block level, or is it doing a hash and then running the differences and reconstructing that after the fact? How is that working? So
basically, the question was: is a lot of the utilities that PC-BSD is running, are they dependent on ZFS? And also, your question was kind of how is the ZFS file system doing the instant backups that we kind of talked about?
Right.
So first of all, yes, it is entirely dependent on the ZFS file system. Now, with that being said, you can set up zvols with ZFS and actually run. Say you wanted to have a UFS data set running on the system, you can do that. You can actually have multiple different kinds running on it. But they are entirely dependent on the ZFS file system. We kind of went exclusively to ZFS to take advantage of those awesome features with the instant restore. Now, to answer your other question about how it's kind of doing it, it is using checks and hashes to basically, that's basically what it's doing. The way it's been explained to me, and I'm by no means a ZFS expert, if you want to find out a whole bunch more on ZFS, I'd encourage you to look online for Drew Levine's talk on ZFS. But Drew Levine, she works with us over the PC-BSD project, and she's our resident expert on it. And a lot of her talks are already on there. But the way that it's explained to me is it's basically like it's leaving a series of pointers, basically to show it from each snapshot how to get back to its original version. Then when you make another snapshot, it's getting back to that last snapshot. So, but yeah, it is using a series of checks and hashes. That is, if you get down to the base, that is what it's doing.
So I'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
If it's doing those hashes, then it's really not moving a lot of data. So does it work kind of like deduplication across, if you're doing backups or if you're moving information across the network, would it be something that would be used in that fashion?
Across the network, you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it totally, that's actually where ZFS is the strongest, is moving data, large amounts of data, huge amounts of data, you know, across networks, however you want to do it. It has some ridiculous high cap. I mean, I can't even remember how high, but it's ridiculously huge. It'd be very difficult to reach that. Yeah, thanks for your question. Anybody else? Yeah.
How big is the team working on PC-BSD?
The team that works exclusively on PC-BSD is 3 people. It's myself. It's the lead developer, who is Chris Moore. He's the person that designed PC-BSD about 8 or 9 years ago. It started as just a hobby for him. And then also his brother Kenmore works on the project. So if you see a PC-BSD talk, it'll probably be one of us or Drew Levine. With Drew, so we have 4 people. She handles documentation, and then I handle the quality assurance. I do a lot of bug tracking and bug reporting, all that fun bug management stuff that usually falls on me. So we have 4 people that work directly on it, and then of course FreeBSD is huge. They have huge teams of people working on several different sections of the operating system. So hopefully that gives you a good idea. But that's how many we have working directly on it. Yes.
Just a follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
It's a sore subject, but with the changes so many Linux distributions to systemd,
Yeah.
how does that affect BSD going forward as far as development? I mean, up to this point, or up to recently, you would have enough, I guess, similarities between Linux and
Right.
BSD that you could basically collaborate better. I'm just wondering how that's going to affect BSD in the future.
So the question is basically how is systemd going to be affecting our development with PC-BSD? Because historically in the past we've been so close, we consider ourselves very close cousins to each other, so that we can take software back and forth. We can port things from Linux very easily, and vice versa, I'd imagine. So the way that it's impacted us, there's a couple different ways it's impacted us. If you're just talking about, we've seen a lot of users that have come over from Linux that are not happy with the way systemd is done. It's kind of one of those things, to each their own. There's a lot of people that like it. As far as development, how it's going to affect us, we haven't really seen any real ways that it is impacting us at this time, but those may become more apparent as that rift grows a little bit. We may have to get a little more creative in finding ways to make that work. But at this time, we have not seen any great chasms that we can't bridge so far. No, that's not a great answer, because it's not really, there's just not a lot that we have right now to know. But hopefully going forward, we'll know a little more about that. Thanks for your question, though, again. Anybody else? Yeah.
Just follow up on the systemd part. It has affected a few things, like we still use X11 on BSD. We have a port of Wayland, but we don't have Weston or anything like that, because it does have a dependency on UDEF, which is part of systemd now. So there are some minor ones, like for those kinds of things, but it's not like, if you want to use Wayland, you're pretty much out of luck. But if you're going to use anything else, like Warden, then you're pretty much fine for right now. That is.
So Ali was basically explaining that there has been a little bit of an impact with FreeBSD itself. So I appreciate you speaking up and telling us that. So is there anyone else that has any questions today? No? If not, you can always stop by the booth and find me afterwards. I want to thank you guys so much for stopping by. It means a lot to me. I know a lot of you guys stopped by the booth. Thanks so much for coming, and you guys have great time today, all right? Thanks so much. I feel like I went fast.
Yeah, actually, this is about on time for
Excellent.
the first few that went through today.
I don't particularly, I get a little nervous talking in front of people, and so I always worry about just have to speak talk.
Yesterday there were a couple of differences. I mean, I like that. I prefer that communication style, but this stuff so fast. I can follow it all. I don't know how anybody else felt about it.
I hear you.
Wow, they overcharged on coffee or what?
Well, I can't drink coffee. Maybe that's my problem.
So it's pretty interesting. You can play around with it. It's on FreeBSD and it's on BSD as well, and it's of course on PC-BSD. And that's how I run a lot of it. Just straight Linux applications. They won't run Skype, but it'll run most
And we get somebody just about like every couple of days that's like, when's Skype gonna work? Yeah.
It used to work.
Yeah.
I kind of refuse to say.
Good.
Oh,
just
okay,
use all the
yeah, there's no choice.
See, I just use like the Pure I and whatever, because it actually works with PC-BSD. You know, I find my conference, but not everybody wants to use that. So, yeah.
So if you want, if you have any other questions that are related to sort of kernel side and how that stuff works,
That's, yeah.
I'll
That's all.
be I'll be there for a bit.
Yeah.
Previous Steve's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the, was it the one?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just kind of, that's why I'm not.
Yeah, your question kind of stumped me because I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, well, you know, I mean, yeah, it's running on top of the previous kernel, but I was like, you know, like I'm in my head, like I'm trying to play back, you know, like go back 2 years when we first implemented, and I'm like,
Yeah.
honestly, it's not.
Even further back from previous Steve, but yeah, it's maybe actualization.
Yeah.
I was really curious.
It's neat, but I will say a lot of it is still emulating, I think, the 2.4 kernel. It might be 2.6.4 actually.
Oh, that is
I
far
remember
back.
at least.
Well, the thing is, it just has to pretend that it's Linux. It's not. They can do security updates and whatnot, and it'll work. But I was going to try to follow up, but then someone else.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that ZFS was. There's a lot of easier ways to explain it, and it's like
Yeah.
it's that it's incremental.
Yeah, but it's not incremental though.
It is, but it isn't. It's incremental on the pointers of bytes and inode versus.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, but like yeah.
It's complex. ZFS is extremely complex.
But like, never tell Drew it's incremental because like Drew's, oh no, it is not incremental.
Yeah.
That's how it acts though. That's what
It
matters.
acts that way. And you're probably right. Maybe in the future, what I should do is explain more